I wasn't going to make a video of this because I was fault finding the other day, trying to find out what a clonk, where the clonk I've got coming from the front suspension is. But considering I slightly made a mistake last time, I'll do a very quick video. So been getting a little bit, I went to a track day and obviously was attacking the curbs aggressively and things like that, and I've had a clonk at the front suspension. First thing I thought it was this the bush gone on the back of the controlling arm. It needed doing anyway, but that hasn't sorted the clonk. And then what I found is it isn't in any of these joints here, because these are only about a year old, but at the end of the steering rack, I could feel a clonk within the movement of the steering rack. And if you didn't know that there is some adjustment there. So I did a bit of Googling and no one's done a video on it. I couldn't find any information anywhere. So basically just relied on some past knowledge where I've adjusted steering racks in the past. So basically under this, all this plastic, which I'm going to take off in a minute, is this end of the car on the driver's side for a UK car. There is a big nut, securing nut, and a screw part that goes into the steering rack. And basically underneath that is a spring that puts preload onto the top of the steering rack. So it's hard to do one-handed because I'm holding the camera, but you have your steering shaft coming down, and that obviously normally has a gear on the end, and then your steering rack that goes across is normally, it isn't round, it has the top cut off, and it has multiple grooves, gear grooves put into it. So when this gear comes down here, it obviously turns and goes along those grooves in the steering rack to push it sideways. But because of this shaft, it's not really normally located that well on the other end. You have to press preload onto it to push it down onto the steering rack part. And if you don't, there's movement in there. So in this end adjustable part, haven't had it all out, but I've had the main stopper out, and there's a spring in there, and then there's most probably a cup the other end, and obviously putting more pressure onto that spring will take up more of the slack in your steering rack and hopefully take out any slight movement. Obviously it could be that there's bushings normally in steering racks. It could be that a bushing's gone and things like that. So I did all this last weekend, and I've put too much preload on the steering rack, so it's not self-centering properly. So I need to ease off my adjustment a little bit, so I'll show you how to do that. But the first thing to do is this panel, because you need to get in here really, and this is a bit of a pain. So basically you need to take off all the clips. This bottom part comes off separately, so take off all these clips. You're going to have to take off quite a few of the screws underneath, and then we'll pop this down. There's a bolt when this bit comes out, there's a bolt here, there's another bolt in here, and then there's a clip at the front. If we're lucky, we can just take off a few of the bolts along the bottom, these two, and then sort of pull that down, and hopefully that'll give us enough access just to adjust this, rather than having to take the whole of the under tray off, which is a bit of a pain, but we shall see. So take off all the screw-on bolts. They're an 8mm socket to go onto those type of screws. They're along the bottom. That's the part from in here. You get a little you got these clips, so basically you turn them very slightly, and the head pops, and then you wiggle them out, and then this gives you this section. So you're still trying to get past this, which is the inner guard. Like I said, there is one bolt here, there is one bolt there, and then just up there underneath there's one of those little plastic ones. So those are my next victims. So I'm not dropping this off as much as I did before, but what I found before was this pipe is a bit annoying. So undo this one, pull it upwards, and then put a screwdriver in to hold it up. But what we've got in here, and annoyingly it's right under this pipe, let's see if we can get there. So there, that big bit there right in front of you under the pipe, that's a big locking nut on there, so I use an adjustable to get to that. And then weirdly the bit in the middle looks like a big Torx, but actually a 1/2 inch square end to a ratchet without any socket on fits into that. So let's give that a crack. So I've undone those side pipes, and I've pulled them up and then just wedged the screwdriver into the back of that fan bit to hold it up. And then it is this part here that you need to get an adjustable on, and just get that small thin lock nut spun. So this is the thin lock nut that is on top. You've then got the bit that actually screws in as putting the preload onto the rack. That is a 1/2 inch ratchet. Like I said, it's the end that fits in, no socket, just the square 1/2 inch end seems to fit in. And I'm just going to wind a little bit of preload off that, and hopefully I'll get my recentering, self-centering back on my steering without getting the clonk back. I've marked it with a little bit of a chalk pen, that white section, just so I can see, because you can't really get in there, just so I can see how much I'm taking off on the preload, of how many turns. So I've actually taken it out. That's what presses down. This is a little spring that's inside it, and obviously the further you screw that in, the more preload you put on that spring. I have no settings to go off, so I haven't found anything about number of turns for how much preload or anything like that. So it literally is suck it and see. Undone it a bit and try that, and if I get a better response, then I'm all sorted. If not, I'll be doing this again.